This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy and Gary Vasilash, episode 579 for November 11th of 2021. The chip shortage will get worse and car prices will go higher. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
Hello, Mr. Vasilash.
John, you're back in the studio. I'm back in my house. That was
a bit of a role reversal last week. That's right.
Yeah. So as we start today's show off, we've got to say thanks to all the veterans. Today is Veterans Day, and if it weren't for them, we wouldn't be able to sit here and talk about cars all day.
That's exactly right. Good shout out to everybody who has served. We admire your service.
So you've been a little concerned about some of these quizzes I've been giving you, saying too hard. Okay, so this one, John, you have a 50% chance of being right because I know you'll know one of them.
Okay. Shoot.
All right. So on November 11th, 1989, Ford fully acquired a company based in the UK. Now I can't be.
That would have to be Land Rover. No, I got it wrong. It was Jaguar. No, I got that wrong. It was Aston Martin.
I forgot about Aston Martin. Okay, but you were still wrong. It was Jaguar.
Right.
So they acquired Jaguar for $2.5 billion. Okay. Then in March of 2000, they bought Land Rover. And they got that from BMW for $2.8 billion. Then they sold them both in March 2008 to Tata for $2.3 billion.
No, to Tata. Yeah.
Right. So roughly doing the math, it didn't seem to work out very well for them.
No, they may as well lit cigars with $100 bills than buy those companies for all the good it did them.
So why do you think they failed at it?
Because they tried to incorporate Jag and Land Rover and Volvo and Aston Martin into the Ford Motor Company umbrella. And, they should have been left alone, provided with resources, but no, they had to buy out of the corporate parts bin as much as possible. They had to adopt all kinds of Ford processes and the like, which I kind of understand, but it didn't work. It was a disaster. And, Tata has given them free rein, Jaguar and Land Rover, JLR, as it's now combined together. And they're turning out the best product they ever have because they're running their own shop, not trying to fit into some big mothership.
Yeah, it's an interesting development, but for some reason, it doesn't seem as though when U.S. companies purchase companies from overseas, I mean, you think about General Motors and Saab. I mean, that didn't work out either.
Same reason. GM tried to incorporate it in and treat it just like another brand, not as a standalone company. In fact, I would argue this is when GM started going downhill itself, when instead of having standalone divisions, Chevrolet, Pontiac, Buick, Cadillac, etc., that originally were standalone companies, it tried to mesh them up into this big corporate miasma of things. And, look where they are today. Instead of having 50% of the U.S. market, they're down to 16% or something like that.
Yeah. Times are changing. And for those who are watching the show, by the way, we have a slight change. So why don't you...
we were going to do a show on a startup called Right Angle that has got a breakthrough in hydrogen. We're going to have to push that back several weeks because they were unable to do it today. But we've got a substitute, Bob Gritzinger from Ward's Intelligence. And there he is, ladies and gentlemen.
And a fine substitute I am. Actually, I was supposed to be here anyway to talk hydrogen. So I'm just filling the spot that I would have filled.
Yeah,
on the screen.
that's true, but now you're extra special.
I wanna point something out that you missed as it relates to the whole Ford takeover of the world at that point. Mazda was also part of the umbrella, and I remember going through the Aston Martin plant in the UK, and we're looking under the hood. And I had asked, how many parts are you picking up from Ford for a DB11 or something? And they were, oh, this doesn't happen. This is, and we were looking under the hood of one of the cars, and I see a Mazda part number on an air conditioning condenser. And I said, wow, you got a Mazda part under there, nobody knows. Nobody notices those things. Wow.
Look over there.
Gritzinger.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, just they were mixing and matching from all over the place, and it's just great that companies, brands like Volvo and Jag and Land Rover and Aston and Mazda have survived that influence.
That's right.
So, John, do you think that the situation with Mazda was the same as with the other three companies?
Oh no,
Pretty much. I mean, Mazda very much tried to keep Ford as much as possible at arm's length. And if you remember, I think Ford first bought into Mazda. I'm hazy on the details now. Was like in the early 1970s. Somehow I want to say 1972 or something like that. And then they increased their ownership, which got them not only board positions, they were able to appoint the CEO. Remember, Mark Fields.
Mark Fields
even worked at Mazda.
Mm-hmm.
It worked out a little bit better than the premium brands that Ford later bought, but I'll bet if you added up all the money that Ford put into Mazda over the years, I'll bet it never made a dime in profit off that.
Yeah.
So you're right. So it was 1974 that Ford got into Mazda for the first time. They eventually got 33.4% of ownership.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in May of 1995. And then Alan Mulally just decided, it isn't working out so well. And so slowly they diminished their
but unlike
ownership
the others, Mazda was never wholly owned. So that was a
but interesting little thing. In Japan, the way that their regulations work and all that sort of stuff, if you buy 33% of a company, you can effectively take control of it. Doesn't have to be 51%, And so what'd you say, Gary? They had 33 and a quarter or something like that?
33.4, yeah.
Yeah. So they just went over that level so that they could take control of the company.
Interesting.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Mark, about John, about Mark Fields being the CEO there for a while. And so that was part of his training to become the CEO of Ford.
Yeah, it was. And, Ford famously has been such an international company, throughout its history, that if you're an executive at Ford, if you don't get an overseas assignment, there is no way you are going to the top. You've got to get your ticket punched with some sort of overseas experience if you really want to move up the ladder at Ford.
So,
For sure.
So, John, the headline of the show, you teased the chip shortage. So I understand that you talked to some people at a chip company recently that seems to indicate that it's going to be a long time before this is behind us.
Yeah, that's right, Gary. So up to now, every time we, look at what automakers are saying, the message over the last number of months has been, okay, the chip shortage, it's going to start to ease. We start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. 2022 is going to be much better. It'll be solved by 2023. Then on Monday, the Original Equipment Supplier Association, which is all the suppliers who get together in North America, had their annual conference. I moderated a discussion with a guy from onsemi. onsemi is one of the larger, though not well known, US-based chip manufacturers. And this guy's message was the chip shortage is not going away. It's not going away next year. It's not going away in 2023. And the reason is electric cars use a lot more chips than ICE cars. Autonomous vehicles use even more. Connected vehicles, no matter what they are, use a ton of chips. And he pointed out, we are going to see a steep ramp up in connected and electric cars in just the next couple of years. And what he was saying is, yes, all us chip makers are adding capacity for automotive. And guess what? In the next couple of years, automotive is going to gobble up all that capacity and more, because the cars that it's going to be coming out with are going to use a whole lot more chips. And if you look at what's going on in the market right now, tight inventory because they can't build enough cars, that tells me car prices are just going to keep on going up and are going higher still.
All right, before we get to that, though, so let's concentrate on this chip thing for a moment.
Filling that supply, and ideally, we would love to do that from the U.S. But I have a friend who has been involved in sourcing chips for all kinds of consumer products for years all over the world, and he was pointing out just in some text messages that it's like several years to get a chip plant up and running, and like $3 billion. So
way more than that.
So it's huge.
Way more than that.
Just to get it's going to be a couple of years before you can get to some capacity in the U.S.
Okay. So I'm gonna tell you both why you're wrong.
Okay.
So you got to depend on me to do that.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Well, we usually do.
Exactly, Bob. All right. So first of all, what did we have? We still have the pandemic, right?
Right.
But last year in particular, and part of this year, it was very bad. So semiconductor plants in China, Taiwan, and Malaysia were shut down for periods of time due to COVID, right? So let's assume that is going to change with vaccinations, that there will be more vaccinations. So we'll put that to the side. All right. Then there was weather. So in February 21, when there was the big freeze in Texas, that's shut down a plant of Samsung, NXP, and Infineon, and their chip fabs down there. So that shut that down. Samsung, for example, was down for a month, but they're back, right? But you did have that period of time where they were down, okay? Then there was fire in March of this year. The Renesas electronics plant northeast of Tokyo, a fire broke out. And basically, they were down for some 3 months, okay? But they're back. So we have that being back. All right. Now, Bob, you're talking about how long it takes to build a plant. According to the Semiconductor Industry Association, it's from 18 to 24 months to build a fab, okay?
Right.
There are currently 26 fabs that will be going into production this year, of which 3 will be in the United States. These are new fabs, right? And then there are 26 more being built in the world, 4 of which will be in the US. Okay. The semiconductor industry overall, their capital expenditure from 21 to 25 is going to be $156 billion. As a comparison, from 2016 to 2021, they spent $97 billion. That was their CapEx. Okay. Yeah. So it's not quite doubled, but it's big. And it's also worth noting that in Q2 of 2021, again, this is according to the Semiconductor Industry Association, there were more semiconductors sold than in any quarter in history. Okay. So you've got to take into account. I mean, Bob, as you mentioned, that there are consumer products. I mean, Xboxes, right. iPhones, TVs, you name it, right?
Your thermostat,
doorbells.
Doorbells, speakers.
So it's coming back faster. So that's what I say. Of course, I only talk about this stuff. The guy on Semiconductor is obviously does that for a living. So
I think though that you are also making our point, which is it's 2 years away.
No,
Or
it's
more-
it's this year. There's going to be 3 more plants opening in the United States this year.
okay.
Okay.
No,
So
still
that
in
gives us
2021
yeah
or 2022.
2021,
Hey, here's one other thing that the
and
guy-
that's 26. And there's 26 in the world.
Right. So all of those 23 plants worth of chips are sitting off the coast of Long Beach,
Well,
waiting to be delivered. But that's another issue.
That's another issue.
Here's one other thing that the guy from On Semi pointed out that I found very interesting. You know, we talk about silicon chips. He says what the auto industry wants to go to for electric cars is silicon carbide for power electronics, because you can push a lot more electricity through chips like that.
Faster.
And he pointed out that for normal chip production, they can grow a 6-foot tall cylinder of silicon in 2 days. 6 feet, 2 days. Silicon carbide, 1 inch in 11 days.
Ooh.
So he says, as the industry goes to the silicon carbide for EVs, he said, just keep in mind, it takes a lot longer to make these chips.
Okay, but is the functionality of the silicon carbide significantly greater than that? So basically, you need fewer of those chips than you would of normal.
I just think the normal chips can't take it.
Yeah.
Or, you know, look, I'm not a chip expert. I don't want to expound too much on it, but I just know that silicon carbide is, you can push a lot of juice through that stuff.
And switches faster is my understanding. It's, you know, it's the sending them, you know, it's the messages going, it's the on off faster.
So conceivably, if you had, you had one chip that was able to do that really fast, that you'd need fewer.
Potentially. Yeah. I could see that.
And
And then, but then, you know,
given our
as,
electronics expertise.
as soon as you do that, then somebody says, okay, well, we need this level 3 autonomous function and, you know, all of these, you know, Kias and Hyundais and Chevys and now you've eaten up all of those extra chips potentially.
So John, did the executive talk at all about the pricing in automotive versus the pricing in other industries?
No, he did not. But, you know, clearly automotive wants as cheap as it can possibly get. Everybody does, right? Anybody who's buying anything wants to get the best price possible. But, you know, the auto industry has been using old chips built in old fab plants. And as these companies invest in all the money that you're talking about there, Gary, $170 billion or whatever the number is, they're not going to invest in old chips. They're not going to invest in old technology in the fab plants. They're going to go with the latest stuff. And that's going to cost more money. So that they're just going to pass that cost along to the automakers.
And gee, what will they then do?
Oh, they'll give it to us.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, that was one of the other things you wanted to talk about today, Gary, right?
Yeah,
average
so
transaction price.
Yeah, according to Cox Automotive, the average incentives fell to $2,003, which is a 20-year low. 20-year low. And the average transaction price now is $46,036. I mean, where are we going with this?
Yeah, who's buying these? You know, but
prices are going up. You know, last year I made a prediction that before the decade is out, the average car would be $50,000. Well, I was way wrong. It's going to happen way before the end of the decade.
Right.
And, you know, we've seen a $5,000 jump in ATP's average transaction price in just the last year. I mean, this is unprecedented. We have never in the history of the industry seen such a large increase in such a short amount of time. And the automakers love the pricing position that they're in right now. So even when all the chips are available at some point in the future, they're not going to go back to the inventory levels they had before because they want to keep prices high.
Yeah. I went through and looked at some of the more granular stuff. I mean, it's Acura, Cadillac, Jag, Mercedes-Benz, all plus like 20% gains year over year. And,
in terms of pricing, you're saying?
Yeah, ATP. Yeah. It's just, huge jumps for what are already expensive vehicles. And then there's, also part of that group is Mitsubishi. So they go in from 23 to 28, huge for them. But, so it's kind of at various places in the industry, but I'm seeing a lot of that at the high end.
Yeah, I suppose that has something to do with the fact of the OEMs building vehicles that are more costly rather than less costly vehicles in order for them to make more money off of the availability of things like chips. I mean,
right.
Well, let's take a quick look at Ford. Where are they here? 11% up, 45 to 50. Yeah. So, and that's all putting your chips in King Ranch, or, what do they have? Yeah. Top of the line, platinum.
Yeah.
Right?
But I thought there was something interesting that, so Manheim, which does used cars, is part of Cox, and consequently, I happen to be looking at some of their numbers. And so these are for used cars, year over year change of types of used cars.
Wow.
And so compact cars, the year over year change was nearly 40% for compact cars. Okay.
That's nuts.
Luxury cars, 33%.
Mm-hmm.
Mid-size cars are going away, right?
Right.
40%.
Yeah. Right.
Pickup trucks, 27%. SUV/CUVs, 39%. Vans, okay, another category that is seemingly not on the radar anymore, 49.5%. So I mean, I look at this and you have 40% for compacts, 40% for midsize, and nearly 50% for vans. Is the industry missing something here?
People are buying practical vehicles. That price may be way up, but it's still less expensive than the used pickup or used SUV crossover, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, things are not going to change. I don't see prices going back down anytime soon. And, those who are buying a new car right now have gone through the experience. It's hard to get anything, and it's a lot more expensive than it was 2 years ago.
And it could be interesting that we could go back to actually ordering your car again.
Bob, it's happening.
And their dealers are pushing that, and automakers are pushing it.
Well, here's something interesting. If you order your car right now, you'll get a much better price than if you buy off the lot, which used to be the complete other way around. But if you order a car, dealers, looks like they're honoring whatever the MSRP is. They're not tacking on extra money.
Right.
But if you buy off the lot, they absolutely are tacking on extra money.
Oh, right. We've all seen it, added charge, $1,000, $5,000, it's
out of control.
Yeah.
So will there be a reaction? See, I have a feeling that, okay, as this works itself out, as the supply chains get re-welded, okay, as they come back, that there will be things like, more Civics and more Corollas and cars that are less expensive being produced, not all high end, not all Acuras and Lexuses and things like that, right?
And not all premium trim.
Right. Okay. And so to what extent do people say, you know what, I went to car dealer XYZ and that guy wanted to nick me, $5,000 on top of MSRP, I'll never go to that store again. And that maybe there are guys who are basically saying, okay, I'm going to eat it right now, and I'm going to sell vehicles at sticker. I'm not going to add something so I can make additional money, and that you'll have basically a lot of dealers that are going to be on the outs with people.
Yeah, I think dealers, sorry, but I don't think most dealers are wired to not take advantage of market. Right? they are going to add that extra amount as long as they can get it.
Gary, I think there will be a backlash right now. People are just pulling their hair out, trying to get any vehicle that they can because they need them. And so the backlash is not any time or right around the corner, but it'll come.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So speaking of dealers, I thought that this was an interesting thing that I found, and this was from the NADA. They put out some figures, and so they're the National Automotive Dealers Association. Okay, so this is quoting them. While sales were down for new vehicles, this is about October. So while sales were down for new vehicles as a whole due to inventory, battery electric vehicle sales totaled 300,635 through the first 9 months of the year. Okay, so dealers sold 300,000 and change.
With this.
But wait a minute, this is an increase of 91.3% compared to the same time in 2020. Okay, so they sold 91% more electric vehicles. They went on to say BEVs still represent a small number of the vehicles sold at franchise dealers and represent 2.6% of all new vehicles sold year to date in 2021. Okay, now stick with this. Now here's the thing that I find to be just.
You're going to the T word soon here.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm expecting.
No. I'll let you guys get to the T word. Okay, this is a quote. NADA: franchised auto dealers hit a milestone related to BEV sales. From 2012 to the end of the third quarter 2021, franchise dealerships have sold 1,507 new BEVs. Okay, now let's go back. In the
what was
first
that number again?
500,000.
500,000. Okay, so let's go back. So for the first 9 months of this year, 300,000 BEVs were sold. From over a nearly 10-year period, franchise dealers sold 500,000.
Yeah. Because what they failed to mention in their release that of the 300,000 BEVs that have been sold, I don't know what the number, 77% of them were Teslas,
right,
who, by the way, don't use the dealer franchise network.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yes. That was, We're going
Gary,
to the same
another
place.
thing that you had on your list that we should get to, as long as we got dealers on the mind, where's the number? 360 Cadillac dealers said, no, thank you. We would rather sell our store than sell EVs.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, okay. So I was talking to a guy just yesterday, as it happens, who had formerly been in marketing at Cadillac. Okay. He no longer works for General Motors and he made an interesting point that he was surprised that, Cadillac is going so all in on EVs because, he made an interesting observation, I think, that the average age of a Cadillac buyer is still rather high by industry, measures. I mean, it's just like, so these are people who are probably not going to be, early adopters, and people are going to say, well, God, you can buy a Tesla for how many years now? But I mean, early adopters in the context of a company like Cadillac, right? They're used to having just, go in and buy an XT5 that has an internal combustion engine under the hood, and they don't even think about it, right? But if they go in and they see something like a Lyriq, and they're like, what the hell is this? I mean, for all of its high techiness, I mean, they're going to say, wonder what Lincoln's got.
Somewhere here in my stack of stuff, I have a list I've been keeping of all of the brands that have said that they are going pure electric by 2030 or 2035 or something, and they are almost exclusively premium high-end brands. It's Cadillac, it's start naming them.
There's Volvo's in there.
Volvo, Jag, you can run down the list of all of these that are saying they're going to do this, but they're not the meat of the market brands.
Yeah. But, I want to go back to the Cadillac thing, because remember when Cadillac first announced this a year ago, they said, 20% of our dealers are going to drop out. And some people made a big stink about that. And they said, hey, look, that means 80% of our dealers are going this route. Mm-hmm. And now when the real numbers come out, 360 dealers going away, that's 40%. What the hell happened between a year ago and now that, another 130 Cadillac dealers decided, nope, it's just not worth it. I'm getting out.
Yeah.
So do you think, John, perhaps part of this is the fact that these dealers realize that the money they're making right now, they're never going to make again. It's not going to continue at the level it is, right? And that they might as well get out while they can.
Yeah.
Well, look, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but they had to put anywhere from $200,000 to $500,000 back into their stores to put chargers in there, to get all the repair equipment for EVs, for training for their employees and techs and all that sort of stuff. Or General Motors would buy them out. And, for roughly the same money, anywhere between $200,000 and $500,000. And I think a lot of them just decided, I don't see my customer going for these electrics, and I'm not going to make the investment. I'm going to take the money and run. But I'm stunned at how many more decided to take the money and run based on what Cadillac had announced a year ago.
And looking, some of what they had to be factoring into that equation is the more electrics we have, the lower my service profit is.
Yeah.
So there's not as much work coming into the back end. So a lot of opportunities. So they're looking at all of those different factors and saying, I'm walking away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an important point, Bob, that dealers make a lot of money in their service department compared to the money that they make when they sell someone a new vehicle. And so they're counting on this. And so then if indeed, the numbers of, repairs associated with battery electric vehicles are lower than internal combustion cars, and you suddenly say, well, the internal combustion cars are a ever shrinking to 0% of sales. I mean, they'll always, be older cars that people will probably bring back to the dealer for service, but they're going to be taking you down the chin in some ways.
Hey, before you go to that, and I know we got more topics to get into, we do have to take a quick commercial break and give a shout out to our good friends at Bridgestone. We're back talking all things automotive. So, Gary, I'm dying to ask you, here's all these Cadillac dealers that are deciding, hey, I'm getting out while the getting's good. Could it be some of these other EV startups like Lucid has got them concerned? And both you and I got to drive the Lucid Air yesterday. We should talk about that as well.
Well, okay, so let's sort of stick with these luxury car makers for a moment here, and then we'll segue into that. And there was an interesting phenomenon that so numbers came out in terms of the sales so far this year of the premium brands. So at the top of the list is BMW. Okay, so they sold 259,000 and change. Number 2 is Lexus, that sold roughly 246,000. Number 3 is Tesla, which sold approximately 231,000. And then in fourth place is Mercedes at roughly 214,000. Okay,
Whoa,
so
whoa,
here,
whoa, hold the phone. Are you talking global sales?
no, we're talking about sales here
through September,
through the first 3 quarters.
okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay,
Interesting.
US.
Wow.
so basically we have Tesla getting ahead of Mercedes,
Mhm.
right? So John, to your point, okay, does it look perhaps to some people that some other premium brands may be taking market away from established brands, right?
Right.
And this seems to be proof of that. And then we get to companies that, didn't really exist, like Lucid, like the car we drove yesterday. I know that you were completely wowed about it, and I find it to be a phenomenal car. So what is your take on that?
Well, yeah, all market share has to add up to 100%. And as new entrants come into the market, they're going to take market share. It's not like, the market grows to 120% market share. No, it's at 100%. And you just start slicing the pie more thinly. Because as I learned a long time ago, every car that gets built gets sold. They don't disassemble them at the end of the year if they haven't sold and send the parts back to the suppliers. Every vehicle that gets built gets sold. Now, it may not get sold in the time frame that an automaker or a dealer would like to sell it. They may even have to end up selling it for a loss. And in fact, some cars being built now may not be sold for 2 years. Some are that much of a laggard in the market. But every car that gets built gets sold. Every new entrant that comes into the market will take some market share. So yeah, as these new entrants come in, they're going to take share from who? Mainly from the established automakers.
But it on the other hand, though, does the pie not grow with electrified vehicles, or are we saying we're taking it all away from established ICE premium brands, luxury brands?
No, they're going to take it away. The market's not going to grow. If we had all the chips available and there was no COVID and everything like that, there's enough market demand in the United States right now for 18 million new vehicles. More in China, less in Europe. But, there's only so many buyers.
Right.
Rule of thumb in the United States is every year, roughly 5% of the population buys a new car. And this goes back for years. And in good years, it goes up to 6.5%. In bad years, it drops under 5%. But the market's not going to grow that much more. And so as more electrics come into the market, the only thing they're going to do is either steal sales from other electrics that have been out there, or they're going to steal it from ICE cars. And, since the overwhelming preponderance is ICE cars right now, that's mainly where the electrics are going to take market share away from.
And that's, to Gary's list, that's what's happening. I'm curious how far Cadillac and Lincoln are down that list.
Unfortunately, I don't have it, Bob, but I am sure
going to page 3, right? Okay.
It's
But we should talk about that Lucid Air a little bit, because that car was phenomenal. Gary and I got to drive a version where you could crank it up to 1,100 horsepower. And I got to tell you, it's incredible. Off the line, doing a whole shot, it's a quick car, definitely quick. But if you are rolling along at 50 miles an hour or 70 miles an hour and punch that thing, the acceleration is unbelievable. I've never accelerated that fast before. And, I've been in dragsters, I've been in race cars, I've been in at least ludicrous mode in several Teslas, but 1,100 horsepower. And, the car is 4,000 pounds, so it's a bit porky, or 5,000 pounds. It's a bit porky, but
that's good to hear, because often it seems like what we see is you get that instant torque and you're quick off the line and you're quick to 60, but up in the upper speeds, when you need extra punch at 70 from an electric, permanent magnet motors don't work at higher speeds like that, or they don't like to. They're working against themselves. So it's interesting to to hear that.
Yeah, to get off the line, as you guys know, it's about torque. To accelerate once you get going, it's about horsepower. Well, they
Right.
got 1,100 of those horses, and it is spectacular.
And John, I think we need to emphasize the fact that you were talking about all the different types of vehicles that you've driven and never had that sort of experience. This is a luxury car. I mean, this is the interior of this thing is sumptuous. It has a glass roof. I mean, so it is not a boy racer. I mean, it is meant to just allow people to have the most comfortable driving experience that they can imagine. I mean, it's incredible.
But I also predict there's going to be a backlash from the safety advocates, because these electric cars can be so fast. It's one thing if it's a Mustang Mach-E or if it's a Model S Plaid. Those kind of buyers know what they're getting into. But I've been in some family sedans. I'll mention the Volvo XC40 Recharge, a vehicle that I happen to like a lot. Holy moly, the acceleration on that vehicle is also very impressive. But, the typical Volvo XC40 buyer, I think, is going to get into this thing and be overwhelmed by the acceleration. In fact, I think some of them could get caught out in a situation. They're pulling out of a parking lot onto a road, traffic's coming, they hit the accelerator, and this thing takes off like a rocket. And so anyway, what I'm predicting, it'll take another year or two, because nobody wants to say anything bad about electric cars right now. But you watch, the safety advocates are going to come down on this like a ton of bricks, saying these cars are way too fast.
Well, to that point, I think for all of its shortcomings, Mazda has something going with the MX-30.
You think?
In that they designed it, they set up the whole interaction with the driver and acceleration and how it responds to more closely mimic an ICE vehicle, so that it doesn't have that quick. It's still quick, but it's not so abrupt off the line, and it doesn't have one pedal driving mode. You can't bring it down to a stop. You can crank it up a bit, but not to that very abrupt regenerative braking that we've all come to experience in EVs. And their point was, as the average person starts transitioning into BEVs, they're going to want to, they don't really, they know it's electric, they have to plug it in instead of going to get gas, blah, blah, blah. But they want a vehicle that drives like the Chevy they're getting out of. They don't want to be.
See, I don't buy that argument. One thing I'll add, the Lucid Air has very modulated acceleration response. So, I mean, you don't just tip in a little bit and all of a sudden it takes off on you.
Right.
You really have to put your foot into it, and it modulates extremely well. But
you were just saying, the safety people are going to be talking.
Sure,
about,
they are. They're going to go nuts over
how this is way too abrupt.
Right.
And so anyway, Mazda may have an idea here.
Look, I greatly admire Mazda. I think they're totally wrong. The MX-30, I don't care what you say. It's a compliance car. What's the range?
Yeah.
Barely 100 miles, right?
Right.
And I mean, and saying, our customers want it to drive like an ICE. I don't think they do. I think people who get in an electric car want an electric car experience.
I think the early adopters and people who are buying them now want that. But as you get to a mass market, people are going to want a car that's like what they're used to.
Okay,
it's why people keep buying Camrys over and over and over.
And why sales of them keep going down.
Well,
because they're sedans.
But that's because they get into RAV4s and they buy RAV4s over and over and over because they know what it's going to do.
All right. So first of all, we ought to point out that the Lucid Air that we drove costs $169,000. So there are not going to be a whole bunch of people that are going to be getting into this such that people are going, oh my God, this is okay. look at the Chevy Bolt, okay, electric vehicle, which does have it has a nice little bit of pep there. There's no
Right.
question about it. But I don't know that safety advocates are going to start pulling their hair out
No, not
because the thing
now.
goes
Right.
that goes too fast, right? I mean,
Right.
so
No.
so Bob, to your point, to have the Mazda MX-30, which has a whopping range of 100 miles.
Yeah,
I mean,
I did say going in, despite all of its shortcomings, this is what they propose.
Okay, but
And-
isn't this against brand? Hasn't Mazda been the car or the brand of Zoom Zoom?
Right.
And now they're
the
going to
car
say,
still handles like crazy, but it drives like a a Mazda 3 in terms of acceleration and regen. And so see what happens. I don't know if everybody wants that abruptness in their car. And something that my colleague Tom Murphy pointed this out. The person who really doesn't like that abruptness is who? The person sitting in the passenger seat, because they're getting slammed. They don't understand why, they're getting all these G forces. It's not what they're used to. So
okay, but
anyway.
but you can so just so people who have never driven an electric car understand. I mean, this is not like throwing a switch. Okay, you still have the ability to modulate.
Yes, exactly.
The accelerator.
But compared to anything short of, Porsches and Vets and things like that people are not around that much compared to normal cars, they are very much like, it's like flipping a switch. It's very close. It happens fast.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, I'm just picking up on Gary John's point here. Look
at the most
Anyway.
successful electric car out there, the Tesla brand.
Right.
And why are people attracted to those cars? One of the reasons is, the performance in them is just terrific.
Well, yeah.
And that's what Mazda always stood for. And so anyway,
Yeah.
let's
Okay,
get
but
on to another
we could
topic.
go
All right. So
Yeah.
just before we leave this topic, John. Okay, I just want to say, okay, is how much of it is that people have this notion that, it's an electric car, it's an environmental car, therefore it'll be a pokey car, and it's like, whoa, this is not pokey at all. I'll get one of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, I think if you take the average person and stick them in two identical cars, but one of them happens to have more power. I'm not talking Lucid Air or Tesla Plaid S kind of acceleration, but if you put the average person in a car and let them drive it, and then you put them in the same car with more power, I guarantee you 90% of the people are going, I like this one better, i.e. the one
sure.
with more power. They may not be able to explain why. They're just going to tell you, I feel more confident in the car. And so this is why, automakers offer more performance, because generally people like to have it. I'm not talking blistering hardcore enthusiast kind of performance.
Right.
I'm just talking about merging onto the highway, pulling out into a spot in traffic and things like that. People just feel more confident when they got the power to do it.
What are the top selling cars? What are the top selling cars? They are not higher performance. They are all pretty bland. I'm not saying that's necessarily what I like, but that's what sells. And that's all I'm saying is when as people migrate to this market, that may be what they're looking for. A car that acts normal. It's yeah.
And,
Why people want it's
and
why
Bob,
people
Bob,
want
I'll go back to the Chevy Bolt, and if that's what people want, why is that car not selling?
Well, geez, all kinds of reasons beyond.
Okay, but
but this is why people want volume knobs. You know what I mean? Okay.
I do know what you mean, and I'm totally on board with you on that one.
Yeah. So.
All right, so I want to segue a little bit here, talking about performance cars, and I thought it was interesting that that Dodge came out with a new plan, and so Tim Kuniskis, who heads up the Dodge brand, is trying to rekindle enthusiasm, I believe, in the brand. And their new slogan for this program is "Never Lift," meaning keep that accelerator down and just keep going forward. And so part of this includes the 25-8 sweepstakes, which is what I call it, a sweepstakes. It's 8 weeks. They're going to give away 25 cars. Then they're going to hire somebody as the, quote, chief donut maker. This person will get $150,000 to go to events that are important to Dodge people. They'll get a Hellcat to drive. They'll get outfits to wear. Then they're going to have dealers that will become Dodge power brokers. And these will be special Dodge dealers that will be able to talk horsepower and performance to the people that come in. And they will provide access to what is now being called Dodge Connection parts. Okay, these will be special parts for Dodge. Okay, what's happening here? Anybody?
I'll
take a stab at it to begin with. Look, I mean, Dodge sells the ultimate ICE experience as we're drifting into the end of the ICE age. And also, Tim Kuniskis has got to keep this brand alive, because Carlos Tavares, the guy who's now running Stellantis, is saying, you guys got 10 years to prove your worth or you get the chop. And so what's Tim going to do? He's got the Charger and the Challenger, which are as old as the hills right now. And he has done a brilliant job of keeping those cars relevant in the marketplace. But I mean, he's coming to the end of his rope here. What else are you going to do? And what do they have? The Durango, or didn't I read someplace the Durango's going away? So I don't know what Dodge is going to be left with. And here's the other thing I don't understand. I know for a fact the new Challenger and the new Charger, they closed the design of those things back in 2019. And yet they haven't gone to those new cars. They're just going to milk out these the existing models as long as they possibly can. The tooling's all paid for.
Right.
And so he's come up with this idea of never lift. Let's see how it works. I think in the short run, it will work. But this is not going to be the future of Dodge. I mean, this doesn't get them to 2030. And it gets them maybe to the end of 2023. But what comes after that? And what the hell happened to the old, the new designs that I know for a fact, because I talked to somebody who was in the studio that had seen them. What the hell happened there?
Well, next up is the electric muscle car, right? Arriving in 2024, to answer your question.
So is it electric or electrified?
No, pure electric.
Oh, interesting.
Isn't
Bob,
it?
tell us more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just looked it up to make sure that I remembered correctly, but they had showed that concept, and they're going to have an electric muscle car, 2024. Kuniskis talked about it, and it doesn't replace a Charger or a Challenger. To your point, they will keep, it's like auto companies milking their pickup trucks and ICE SUVs while they're trying to build this other stuff. But I don't think there are a lot of specs out there yet. Yeah. In terms of, I've heard things like, all this power and 500 miles of range. So I wonder if what happens when you turn on the heat. So
That's right.
Something less than 500 miles of range.
Right. Yeah.
So speaking of electric vehicle companies, we have to talk about Rivian, which had its IPO yesterday, and as of today, its market cap is $99.93 billion.
Oh my gosh! So it was 86 billion this morning. Now it's up to knocking on the door of 100 billion. That's amazing.
So I looked. So John, Stellantis's market cap. So I looked one after the other. So they were in time about the same. Stellantis 64. So 99 for Rivian, 64 for Stellantis. How many brands does Stellantis have? Like 11, right?
Yeah. Well, you can pick on all of them. You can pick on General Motors. You can pick
Yeah.
on Ford. You can pick on all of them. Look, the market's crazy about EVs.
Right.
You know, investors are going gaga about it. Everybody's hoping that the next startup is the next Tesla, which has got $1 trillion valuation. They all have dollar signs in their mind, in their eyes. They want to jump on the bandwagon. The market has decided, you know, forget logic. The market has decided EVs are hot and the money's going in.
Yep. And 2.3% of the market.
Well, that's for the year, you know.
Wait, and growing to what? 5. And
Well,
then,
listen, last
it'll
month,
grow, but
last month in October, EVs accounted for 3.5%. Now that's still small potatoes, right?
Yeah.
But on a percentage gain basis, that's a big jump.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. But it's still, you know, it's going to grow, but we're still going to have ICE vehicles and hybrids, and even, you know, as much as they get poo-pooed, plug-in hybrids going forward for quite some time. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
General Motors doesn't say we're going to be all electric by 2035. They say our objective is.
Right.
So,
Yep, agreed.
So Bob, how long do you think that the ICE-based vehicles will stay dominant in the industry?
2035 in there, 2035, 2040 at the outside. There will still be some in 2050. We've done surveys of the industry and suppliers and OEMs, and a large percentage are saying that ICEs disappear after 2050.
When will they stop investing in them?
Oh, they already have. I mean, in large measure, they're doing what they can to continue to improve efficiency. There are, you know, all kinds of little tricks that I'm surprised sometimes at what's happening. And I think we haven't seen the end of things like different combustion systems that are going to, heck, I'm thinking, let's see, it's embargoed, but there's more VC turbos to come, let's say, things like that. So there's some investment going into it, but nowhere near what's being plowed into electrics now, really to catch up. They're all trying to catch up with Tesla at this point.
Yeah, look, the only thing that's going to, quote unquote, save the ICE is low cost, low carbon fuel. That's it.
Right. Yeah.
You know, because everything you're talking about, and you're right, Bob, I totally agree with you. The ICE is going to be around a lot longer than most people realize. But to get the better fuel economy, and especially the emissions, and remember with the Biden administration, starting next year, things have got to improve 5% a year through 2026. And then they want a much bigger increase after that. So you're only going to be adding, or the industry is only going to be adding more and more cost to their ICE to make them emissions compliant. And that's going to close the gap in cost with EVs.
Right. And the fuel question, you're right. That's kind of like the after new combustion concepts. Changes in the types of fuels comes in third in terms of what they're trying to develop.
Yeah, well, at the SAE Powertrain Conference, the consensus amongst the top powertrain people in the industry was, yes, low carbon fuels are going to come to the market, but by the time they do, too late. You know, the EV revolution will be so far down the road, they're just not going to be able to compete.
So you know, the COP26 climate conference that just ended today. I mean, so yesterday, car companies including Ford, General Motors, Mercedes, Volvo, Jaguar, Land Rover basically signed on to saying, okay, we're going to work toward this, all sales of new cars and vans being zero emissions globally by 2040, and in quote unquote leading markets by 2035. Okay, so I'm assuming the United States is a leading market. I'm assuming China's a leading market. I'm assuming that Germany is a leading market. So Bob, I just wonder, okay, won't bans by cities and states and even countries bring this a whole lot, forward and not as far out as 2050?
In terms of some of the, I think you have to look at the possible alternatives, and things like a long-range plug-in hybrid to me start to make sense.
But it's not zero emissions.
Well, it is when it needs to be in a city, places like that, and then it's low elsewhere.
But it's not zero.
Well, but you're not. I don't see anyone other than the UK. Who else is zeroing out completely?
Well, among the countries and states, the UK, Canada.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the U.S. It's not the U.S. It's not China. It's not Europe.
But the cities of Atlanta, San Diego, New York City, San Francisco signed into this.
Right. So that's 50-mile plug-in hybrid range, and that's even built into what CARB has suggested for 2035. Plug-in hybrid with a longer range. So that becomes that bridge, and then ICEs are still part of that.
Right, but if again, plug-in hybrids are not zero emission vehicles, and if the requirement calls for zero emission vehicles, you can have the longest range plug-in hybrid you want, and it's still not zero.
It's zero emission where you need it to be.
Yeah, I get that.
Right. I mean,
this may be moot because PHEVs have really not caught on. I mean, not in China, not here, a little bit more in Europe. I think there's more selection in Europe.
Yeah.
But, people who are into electric cars kind of sneer at PHEVs. People who buy ICE cars don't get, what do you mean I got to plug this thing in? It's got an engine. They just don't get it. And as a result, PHEVs they have not set the market on fire, not even close.
Well, they've run into problems. To Gary's point, how do you force someone to plug it in and drive it electric in the city? Right. But if there's some way to restrict that or control that or manage that, that's maybe that solution. All of this points, to me, I think, and you guys are probably on total opposite end of this, but I think Toyota is on the right path, because they're saying we'll work on fuel cells, we'll work on electrics, but we know that our hybrids are going to be around for a long time, and that's where we're gonna make our money, and that's going to support everything else we do.
Well, look, I think Toyota, their logic is impeccable, but I think what they've overlooked is that governments of the world have decided the ICE is going away. And I don't think that had factored into their strategic planning just a couple of years ago. And when you look at all the incentives that are going into buying electrics and the like, I'm not going to disagree with Toyota's logic. I'm just going to say I think they're missing the boat.
Yeah, we have to see who's reading the tea leaves correctly, right? Yeah.
Well, we'll keep having you come back on the show, and we'll monitor how things are going. But hey, we've reached the top of the hour. We ought to wrap it up. Bob, thanks so much for coming on the show, and we're going to have you on a whole lot more quickly than a few years down the road to track on this stuff, because we'll ultimately want to come back and do the show on hydrogen, and we'd love to have you back on that.
Yeah. When we get Ron Harbour and that whole interesting idea that he has there, because there's one, hydrogen has more potential depending on where you're getting the hydrogen, how that's happening. People don't think that's going to work either. So
But to your point, if these guys have really figured out a way to make green hydrogen cheaply and easily, could be a game changer. That's why we wanted to do the show. And when we do it, we'll have you back on.
Yeah, please.
Real good. Well, with that, we ought to wrap it up. But Gary, good seeing you
Okay.
as always.
Take care.
And you too, Bob. And
Bob, stay
everybody-
well.
Okay. Gary,
Everybody who's
keep up the good work, you guys.
Thank you. And no, you got to give a plug to your conference next week, since I know
geez,
you're
yes.
really working on that. I think
Hold
that,
on. Yeah, that's primarily what I've been doing. And next week, all week, 2021 Automotive Tech Week, with co-located with what we're calling Focus Electrification and Advanced Propulsion, and also a dealer focus conference, all built into this giant thing. Next Monday through Friday, Suburban Collection in Novi, Michigan. And you can get more info at wardsauto.informa.com/Auto Tech Week, Auto-Tech-Week. How about all of that?
yeah. And for the 8 people who remember that,
Yeah,
right.
Just do a search for Auto Tech online and you'll
Auto
find
Tech
the link.
Week, and find us and come on out. Yeah. It's going to be a
Good.
busy week.
okay.
No
Thanks,
question.
Bob.
Okay. And thanks everybody for having
See ya.
tuned in.
All right.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.